Alright guys, sorry but not really sorry, I'm going to make you learn something really quick. So reticulated pythons are the longest snakes in the world. It's really not uncommon for them to reach 20 feet and above. A 200-pound reticulated python is kind of common, actually. So the term dwarf or super dwarf reticulated python is kind of a misnomer. It doesn't really translate too much. There is no specific dwarf or super dwarf. The term comes from their locality. They have ample space to grow and they can get as big as they want because they have the space to do so. Now with dwarfs and super dwarfs, they come from smaller localities. I am reading off of a reference chart here, so you're going to see me looking down because I'm not going to be able to... Jesus Christ. The most common localities of super dwarfs as far as islands go that I know of, and I could be wrong, but these are kind of the more prominent ones that they're sourced from, are the Kalatoa, the Kaiwati, probably butchering that, Madu, and Honey Island. And these are all the lesser Sunda Islands, which are south of Indonesia. The Kalatoa Island is maybe 5 miles across, so a very small island. So these reticulated pythons adapt to islands of their size. Therefore, the smaller the island that they're native to, the smaller the snake. So as far as size goes, mainlands can get up to 20 feet, 200 pounds, pretty much no problem at all. Kalatoa Island, they're known to be anywhere from 5 to 7 feet long. Kaiwati, I am butchering that I'm sure, 7 to 10 feet long. Madu, 6 to 10 feet long. Honey Island, 7 to 10 feet long. So if you get one of these smaller snakes and you breed it to a mainland snake, you get a dwarf or a super dwarf. You're basically just taking a smaller island snake and mixing it with a bigger version of a snake. So the reason that you would do this is you have all these really cool colorations and patterns and morphs of mainland reticulated pythons, and a lot of people want to have them, but they're like, I can't really handle or house a 20-foot, 200-pound snake. And for a lot of people, it's really impractical, and honestly, it's really dangerous. So it's a really highly sought after thing to get something that's known as a super dwarf. And you take one of these smaller snakes and you breed it with something like an albino or a motley or a golden child or you name it. Once you've bred this smaller island snake with a cooler gigantic mainland snake, its offspring will obviously be partial one way or another and partial one way or another as far as its genetics go. So you'll have a cool looking snake that's smaller. So the higher percentage super dwarf or dwarf in theory here, again, this is all theory, this is based on a lot of other factors, but the general theory is the higher percentage super dwarf or dwarf you can have mixed to a mainland of a really cool color, the smaller the snake is going to be. Now, this really all comes down to feeding schedule, it comes down to the frequency of feeding and how much you're feeding. And honestly, most snakes are going to grow as big as you allow them to grow. So if you think about it, mainland snakes can grow up to 20 feet long because they have the space to do so. So if you take a baby snake from the island of Kalatoa, which would otherwise be restricted to 5 to 7 feet because food is limited, space is limited, and you put it on mainland, what's going to happen? It can obviously get a lot bigger. The great thing about them, however, is they can thrive in smaller spaces. They can thrive with less food or less frequent feeding, therefore making them a smaller snake. And genetically speaking, they don't grow as big. It's just kind of built into their DNA that they are going to be a smaller snake. So let's look at Aloe really quick. So here's Aloe. He just ate, so he's being super lazy. Now Aloe is 31.25% super dwarf and 50% dwarf, and the rest of him is a platinum, possible het genetic stripe. So he was a super dwarf and a dwarf mixed with a platinum and a genetic stripe. So he has the cool coloration of a platinum and the cool coloration of a genetic stripe, but he is going to be smaller because he was bred with a super dwarf. And now we move down to Omen. She's absolutely tiny. She is a 75% superdwarf purple het snow. So she is a 75% superdwarf, and she was bred with these genetics. So she is going to be a much smaller snake than Aloe is, because Aloe is only 31.25% superdwarf and 50% dwarf. Now, as far as percentages go and how all of that works, I'm still not 100% sure. Full disclosure. So with our newest snake, she is 100% Kalatoa reticulated python. So she is 100% quote-unquote superdwarf. She came from the absolute smallest island that reticulated pythons are found on, and they average 5 to 7 feet, fully grown. The thing that makes this snake so cool is she is 100% Kalatoa, meaning that somebody went to the island of Kalatoa, got a male and a female, brought them back and bred them, and boom, there you go. 100% Kalatoa, captive born and bred. So she will have a kind of flighty demeanor because she isn't, a 10th or 12th or 20th generation of a captive born and bred snake. She's only probably a 2nd or 3rd generation captive born and bred snake. However, she is going to be a pretty chill snake from her demeanor and everything that I've seen of her so far. She is letting me touch her. She is letting me kind of interact with her. I'm being really gentle and not approaching her too much right now because she is just freshly here and I want to make sure that she gets comfortable first. But when she breeds to any mainland reticulated python, it's going to be a high percentage superdwarf. So a high percentage superdwarf, or in this case, a pure superdwarf, quote unquote, mixed with a really cool morph from a mainland, you're going to have really high percentage superdwarf babies. And obviously going through all this trouble and breeding a higher percentage superdwarf means more money. Now, if you talk in the case of a 75% superdwarf like Omen mixed with something like a purple het snow albino, you're talking big bucks. So consider the fact that this snake can produce offspring that's going to be a really high percentage superdwarf, but not just I'm going to say boring lightly, because I actually really like the coloration of a basic gene. But if this snake is bred with something like a motley or I don't know, you name it, it's going to be a much smaller snake, somewhere in the realm of 9 to 12 feet. And as it breeds further and further and further, you're going to get smaller and smaller snakes. So that is what makes this snake so freaking cool, and that's why we're so excited to have it. That's a bigger box.
It's a heavier box.
Hello, Callie. Oh, she's not happy. Alright, so here's her box. This is about the same size box that Kitty came in. Here's my hand for point of reference. That is the Viv that she's going in. So we don't know the temperament of this snake. It was captive born and bred. She is about a year old. So as a precaution, we have isopropyl alcohol ready, as well as a snake hook. Always good to have on hand just in case they decide to give you some trouble. The snake hook is just for maneuvering them. It's not meant to be a defensive tool. This is just soft plastic. It couldn't hurt the snake really. So just in case of a bite, it's always good to have alcohol or Listerine on hand. And you pour the alcohol or Listerine in their mouth, and more often than not, it'll make them let go. Otherwise, you risk damaging their teeth. If they are on you too hard and you can't get them off, they will occasionally break teeth off. And if they break teeth off, it's dangerous for the snake. So the alcohol is more for protecting and making sure that the snake is safe and doesn't rip teeth out into one of our arms. Not really so much for us, it's more for the safety of the snake. How's she feel?
Heavy. Pretty heavy.
Yeah? I'm just trying to feel her girth. Oh, that's 2 coils of her.
Mm-hmm.
Sure to watch her face.
Oh, hi, pretty girl. Oh, you're in there with the pack. That's why. She wrapped around the pack. That's what the weight was.
It's always really stressful when you first get a snake, making sure that they did in fact make it here alive and safely.
Oh, hi, little angel. I see your face. Hi.
So what Whitney's doing right now is rolling that backpack so she can gain access to her head without having to reach in and look like a predator coming in to swoop down on her. Trying to get her to expose her head without stressing her out too much and making her think that we're trying to eat her. It's kind of hard to do. Oh, here's her head.
Mm-hmm. You're okay, honey.
She is beautiful. And she isn't really going to be a rack system snake for us. She's going to be a pet, as well as a breeder, but we don't really like to think of snakes as something that we have for breeding purposes only. You know, these are animals that we do in fact love and want to be able to see. So, but not only want to be able to see, but interact with as well, and get them tame and try and get them to have the nicest temperament possible.
Can I have that? Sorry.
It always cracks me up when they fall.
She was good.
Beautiful face. Mouse soup. Yeah.
She's good.
That was a good strike. I'm gonna try this again.
Touched my hand.
I can't see that.
Don't care.
Hollow's snoozing, and it would show you how gentle his temperament is. But he's about to eat, and you don't want them associating food with being held. So we're gonna wake him up before we actually dangle a mouse in front of his face. There you go. So he's actually awake now. I saw his tongue flick. So he smells that mouse, though he's looking at me.
I don't like my hand. Here.
He's not gonna get you. Good strike, buddy. So I'm gonna wake her up. Which you shouldn't do this. You should never wake up a retic with your finger.
You hungry? Get hello. That was like the sleepiest looking. She's going to town. Wrong end, bud. You don't care that we're right here. Look at him. Okay.
Why do you always go ass first? Alright, you enjoy, buddy. I'm going to cover you back up. So I'm covering him with a blanket because he has been rubbing lately on the glass. And he's kind of rubbing himself raw on his face. And the towel kind of prevents him from seeing any outside stimulus that would make him want to try and get out. So here is a Mexican black king snake. Tiny little buggers. Oh, it was a good try. It's quite the mouthful, little girl. Very incredible. And just like that, past her esophagus and into her belly. Well, not quite yet. You're a little bit bloated, baby girl. Just a tiny bit. You happy?